Hello and welcome to Conscious TV. I'm Ian McNay, and today our guest is Eli Jaxon-Bear. Hi, Eli.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And it's interesting because I was originally going to interview about the Enneagram, because I know that you've written a book about the Enneagram and it's a passion for you, and you work with the Enneagram. And so I ordered your book here, The Enneagram of Liberation, From Fixation to Freedom, thinking, well, I'll do my homework, and I ordered it through Amazon secondhand. And the book finally arrived this morning, just as I was leaving the house, so I've hardly had a chance to look. So I wasn't sure whether to make the interview on the Enneagram, and I asked you beforehand, what would you like the interview to be about? Do you have a preference? And you said you're interested in waking up.
Yes.
And I think that's a good start. So what does waking up mean to you, Eli?
It means that everyone is walking around in a trance, and it's possible to wake up and be free. And actually, it's the next stage of our human evolution. We started out as in pre-egoic stage, in a time not so long ago when we were hunter-gatherers living in small bands, up through maybe the Middle Ages, where individuation wasn't part of it. We were known by our roles. So you're a hunter or a gatherer, or a farmer or a wife, or you're the virgin that gets sacrificed. You're not Mary who gets sacrificed or Jane who gets sacrificed. You're the virgin who gets sacrificed. And so it was our roles and our function is how we defined ourselves. Then we have the age of enlightenment and individuation and the start of ego, where suddenly I am a somebody. And actually I have universal rights, and it's beautiful. And it's this total flowering of the individuation and the individual. And this leads to where we are now. And where we are now is that this flowering is already starting to poison the world, that our world is dying from this ego. And it's time for the next stage, which is the transcendence of ego. And this is our next evolutionary leap. It's to wake up from the individuality to realize the universality. And that's the human potential. And the difference is that all the previous evolutionary stages happen automatically. So a caterpillar has no choice to become a butterfly. But we as humans, in this stage, it's our own conscious participation that allows us to wake up, to realize the truth of our own true nature. That we've been programmed as animals to have a brand that we call a name, and that we identify that as who we are, with our past and our future and our family. But then there's a possibility to find out who we really are. What's deeper than this identity that we've taken on from birth that dies at the end of this life? There's something transcendent and immediate and here right now, and it's possible for all of us to realize it, to wake up. That's what waking up means, to realize the truth of your own nature, the truth of who you really are. And that is why we're here as humans. That makes everything else worthwhile.
And the truth is we can't really go on as we are, because resource-wise we're using up everything so fast. Yeah. The planet's overloaded, and the planet will clear us out unless somehow we wake up.
So it's a race. There's a race between the death of the planet caused by ego and the possibility of waking up in the transcendence of ego. And who gets there first? It's unknown. But it's up to each one of us to take full responsibility for ourselves by finding our own true nature and waking up and realizing what's true, realizing yourself as freedom, consciousness, and love.
And it's also interesting how we have been looking more and more on the outside. And so we're not that stupid. Most of us are trying to find happiness in our own way, and we think about having the relationship that works, and the bigger house, and the obvious things, a nicer car, etc. We're going to be happy. We're going to be complete. We're going to feel our fullness. Right. And of course, it doesn't work that way, does it?
And that's the beauty, is that ultimately you find that searching on the outside doesn't bring you happiness. And there's an alienation that happens with that. And that alienation is the ripeness of the spiritual search, which means you're willing to turn away from everything that didn't bring you happiness to find the source of happiness. And the source of happiness, it turns out miraculously, is already here, already present, alive, free, and your own self. So how far do you have to go to realize yourself?
Well, let's talk a little...
You know, some people say, well, it's a long spiritual journey and you have to do all these different things. How far are you going to go from yourself to yourself?
Yes, but you have to be ready for that, Eli.
And to be ready for that means you find that there's a frustration and that nothing else that you've done brings you fulfillment and happiness. Now, there are people the people who are dying for freedom in Tehran right now. They are dying for the basic human rights that we take for granted here. this wouldn't be possible there. And so they're at a certain level of evolution where they have to find those human rights, they have to fight for them and establish them. Then they'll realize, oh, now that I have these human rights, I'm still not fulfilled. But until you have that, you can't know that.
Absolutely.
And so until you have the car, you don't know the car is not going to give you fulfillment. So now we, at a certain stage, at the highest level that society produces, have had the car and the job and the lovers and the family and the money and know that it doesn't bring you happiness. Beautiful. Then turn away from all of that to find what does bring you happiness. To turn in a totally new direction.
And there's different, I've interviewed a lot of people on this, broadly on this subject, conscious tea, the last year or so, and there's really different opinions. And opinions, I don't mean necessarily mind opinions, but points of view, let's say, that have come from experience. And some people say it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter how much you search, you will not actually find what you're looking for because the search is in the way. And when it happens, whatever happens, it happens at the grace of God.
Yeah. So, if that's true, God bless you. In my experience, you have a conscious choice. Because I had a conscious choice, my teacher had a conscious choice, and his teacher had a conscious choice. My teacher's teacher is Ramana Maharshi, who, one of the great living saints of our time. And he, as a young boy, became terrified of death at 16 and made a conscious choice to find out who dies. And that choice to find out who dies is called self-inquiry. And we all have the capacity to look inside to find out the truth. Every one of us, every human being has this capacity. And then it's just a question of, are you willing and do you want it? And then you simply make the choice to find out what's true and be willing to leave everything else behind. Everything that we consider real, you leave behind to find what is reality. Everything that we've considered true, we leave behind to find the truth. Everything that we've searched for happiness, we leave behind to find true happiness. And that's a conscious choice.
And what's self-inquiry?
Just as I said, self-inquiry is to find out, who am I?
Who am I?
Who am I really? What am I? This name? Am I this body? Am I these emotions? Am I these thoughts? They all come and go, and yet I'm always here. And so what is it that's always here when the thoughts come and go, when the emotions come and go? What will be here when this body goes? What's constant? My teacher would say that reality is what doesn't come and go, isn't born and doesn't die. So everything that's born and dies, everything that comes and goes, we can turn away from to find reality, to find the truth. And that only takes a split second, a willingness to turn away from everything towards the unknown to find what's real. That's self-inquiry.
Okay. I'm just thinking before we were talking, before we switched the cameras on, we were talking about your life as such, and I'd just like to talk a little bit about that because I think that's interesting for people to put everything in a context and know more about the story, if you like, of Eli Jaxon-Bear. And so how you got to where you are now. And you were a fugitive from the Vietnam War, I think in the early 1970s, and you were living in the mountains. And you were reading Lao Tzu at the time, and you had a big realization then, didn't you?
Well, in reading Lao Tzu, I could see that what he was saying was true, that non-ado. Oh, one of the things he said that really blew my mind, he says, fear victories and welcome defeats. And I thought, oh my God, that must be a mistranslation.
Let's repeat that.
Fear victories and welcome defeats.
Okay.
And I thought, well, couldn't be right, must be a mistranslation. But I've learned now that what he's saying is absolutely right, because in the victories, we become puffed up, inflated, and ready for the fall. And in the defeats, we learn. We learn about ourselves, we learn about our character, we learn about what's important, and we learn about the choices we've made. And so, in fact, I've had to say that it wasn't a mistranslation, it was just my ignorance. But so I was in this situation where I didn't know what to do to stop the war. In 1971, I was a federal fugitive when we tried to stop the government during May Day demonstrations, and I didn't know what to do. I knew that I was one with my brothers and sisters in Vietnam, and I felt they were right in shooting down the bombers. And if I really was one with them, I should be shooting down the bombers. I should be doing something. And so I had guns, I had dynamite, but I found I couldn't kill for truth or freedom. But I was willing to die.